Which vehicles drop the most in value after only 1 year? That's what we're going to find out. Welcome to Car Help Corner, where we help you, the consumer, master the process of car buying and car ownership. I'm going to share the top vehicle models that plummet the most in value after only 1 year of ownership, that cost their owners tens of thousands within the first several months. I'm also going to share the top vehicles that hold their value best, that have the best resale value in the first year. So let's start off with vehicles that are in the $20,000 to $30,000 price range that lose the most value in just the first year of ownership. The first vehicle is the Mini Cooper Hardtop, which loses 25.6% of its value, or just under $10,000 in the first year of ownership. The next vehicle that's in the number 4 spot is the Chevrolet Bolt, which loses 28% of its value in the first year, or just over $9,000. And just ahead of the Bolt in the number 3 spot is the Audi A3, which loses 28.7% of its value, or just under $12,000 in the first year. And the next vehicle that's in the number 2 spot is the Nissan Murano, which loses 32% of its value, or just under $14,000 in the first year. And the number 1 vehicle with the worst resale value that's below $30,000, well, that would be the Nissan Leaf, which loses an astonishing 45.7% of its value, or just under $16,000 in the first year of ownership. Now, I should mention that these are US prices. Now, vehicles that are in this price range below 30 grand certainly do not lose as much value as far more expensive vehicles do. But even so, losing between 25 to 45% of a vehicle's value in the first 12 months, well, that's still a lot of money to lose. If you want an affordable car that's not going to plummet in value in the first year of ownership, let's move on to the top 5 best cars that have the highest resale value, that are priced below $30,000. And the first vehicle that comes in the number 5 spot is the Nissan Sentra, which loses 11.1% of its value in the first year, or just over $2,600. And just ahead of the Sentra in the number 4 spot is the Toyota Corolla hatchback, which loses 7.9% of its value in the first year, or just over $2,100. In the number 3 spot, we have another Nissan, the Nissan Versa, which only loses 7.1% of its value, or just under $1,500 in the first 12 months of ownership. The next car that we have in the number 2 spot is a pretty predictable choice, and that is the Honda Civic. According to ISeeCars, Civics only lose 5.5% of their value in the first 12 months, which is the equivalent of just under $1,600. But that's nothing compared to the number 1 car below 30 grand. And that car is the Toyota Corolla Hybrid, which only loses 5% of its value in the first year, or just over $1,300. I often repeat in my videos what a great value both the Civic and Corolla in particular are, and the fact that they barely budge in price after 1 year of ownership is evidence of that. And now let's move on to a more expensive price range, vehicles that are priced between $30,000 to $40,000 that plummet the most in value after the first year. And the first vehicle that we have in the number 5 spot is the Alfa Romeo Stelvio, which loses 32.3% of its value in the first year, which is the equivalent of $17,500. And just ahead of the Alfa in the number 4 spot is the Volkswagen ID4, which loses 32.9% of its value, or just over $15,000 in the first year of ownership. And in the number 3 spot, we have another EV, this time the Hyundai Ioniq 5, which again loses 32.9% of its value in the first year, which is the equivalent of just under $17,000. And in the number 2 spot, we have the Ioniq 5's platform cousin, the Kia EV6, which loses even more value, 33.3% in the first year, which is the equivalent of $18,000. And the number 1 car between $30,000 to $40,000 US, well, that would be the Alfa Romeo Giulia, which loses 33.4% of its value, or just over $16,000 in the first year of ownership. Now it's worth mentioning that 3 out of the 5 vehicles that are in this price range are EVs. EVs can save you money in running costs, but the fact that many depreciate fairly rapidly is a major issue, and is partly why they make more sense to lease rather than finance. Now this is quite a contrast to the 5 best vehicles in this price range that have the best resale value in the first year. The first one that's in the number 5 spot is the Honda CR-V Hybrid, which loses 7.5% of its value, or just under $3,000 in the first year of ownership. And in the number 4 spot, we have the Kia Sportage, or the Sportage Hybrid, which loses 5.9% of its value, or $2,000 in the first year. And we're certainly starting to see a pattern here, because the next vehicle in the number 3 spot is the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid, which loses 5.3% of its value, or just over $2,100 in the first year. And in the number 2 spot, we have yet another hybrid, this time the Ford Maverick Hybrid, which loses 4.4% of its value, or just under $1,500 in the first year. And the vehicle in the number 1 spot, well, that would be the regular Ford Maverick, which loses 4.1% of its value, or just under $1,400 in the first year. So needless to say, 4 out of the 5 cars that are in this price range are hybrids. Hybrids hold their value remarkably well, and that has all to do with their extremely high demand and often very limited supply. So buying a hybrid is clearly a very wise move if you want to save your money not just in gas, but also in long-term value. And now let's take a look at vehicles that are in the $40,000 to $50,000 price range that plummet the fastest in price after the first year of ownership. The first vehicle that we have in the number 5 spot, this would be the Mercedes GLC, which loses 27.2% of its value, or just over $16,000 in the first 12 months of ownership. And just ahead of it in the number 4 spot is the Lincoln Nautilus, which again loses 27.2% of its value, or just over $15,000 in the first year. In the number 3 spot, we have quite a surprise, which is the Jeep Wrangler Hybrid, losing 27.3% of its value, or just over $17,000 in the first 12 months. And in the number 2 spot, we have the Audi Q5 Sportback, losing 27.9% of its value, or $17,000 in the first year. And the number 1 worst vehicle in this price range, that would be the Dodge Durango, losing 30.8% of its value, or just over $19,000 within the first 12 months. Pretty dismal. Now we're starting to see some luxury vehicles enter the mix, which is no surprise. Luxury vehicles tend to depreciate a lot more rapidly than regular vehicles do. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they tend to be not only more expensive to buy, but many of them tend to have very high maintenance and repair costs, including many of the ones that were on this list. And as for the vehicles between $40,000 to $50,000 that depreciate the least in the first year, well, the first one that's in the number 5 spot is the Kia Telluride, only losing 11.3% of its value, or just over $5,300 within the first year. And just ahead of the Telluride at number 4 is the Toyota Tacoma, only losing 10.4% of its value, or $4,700 within the first 12 months. At number 3, we have the Kia Carnival, only losing 9.6% of its value, or $4,000 within the first year. And at number 2 is the Chevy Traverse, losing 8.5% of its value, or $3,700 in the first year. And finally, at the number 1 spot, we have the Tesla Model Y, only losing 8.3% of its value, or $3,800 within the first 12 months of ownership. All of these are high demand vehicles, which explains their strong resale value. Generally, it does have to do with supply and demand more than anything else. Vehicles that have lower supply or longer waiting periods, but also happen to be vehicles that most consumers want, will hold their value better with time. Now, there are a handful of luxury vehicles above $50,000 that are far, far worse than the rest when it comes to rapid depreciation. The top 5 absolute worst vehicles that plummet in value fastest begins with the first one in the number 5 spot, which is the Infiniti QX80. This one loses 28.8% of its value in the first year, which is the equivalent of just over $24,000. Quite a bit of money. But that's nothing when compared to the vehicle in the number 4 spot, which is the Mercedes-Benz S-Class. The S-Class loses 31.5% of its value, or just under $46,000 within the first 12 months. Pretty astonishing. And then at number 3, we have another large luxury sedan, which is the BMW 7 Series, which loses just under 30%, or just over $36,000 in the first year. And moving on to the vehicle in the number 2 spot, we have the Jaguar F-Pace, which loses 35.4% of its value, or just over $28,000 within the first 12 months. But none of these can hold a candle to the number 1 worst vehicle that plummets in value the fastest. And that vehicle is the Mercedes-Benz EQS. The EQS loses an astonishing 47.8% of its value, or just over $65,000 within the first 12 months. Imagine purchasing a vehicle that's over $130,000 and then within the first year, it's only worth $70,000. What an absurd amount of money to lose on a vehicle. Needless to say, just stay away from these vehicles unless you want to just be pouring all your money down the drain. Now, some might say that resale value is not important because they plan to keep their vehicle until the wheels fall off or other reasoning along those lines. And to that I say, well, you never know what your long-term situation is always going to be like. Who knows? Your life circumstances could change, and you may find yourself in a position where you need to replace your car. And if that were to happen unexpectedly, you're really going to wish that you purchased a vehicle that has really good resale value. Otherwise, you're just going to see your bank account empty really fast. So let me know what you thought of the vehicles on this list. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. You can also take a look at my other videos by clicking these links over here. Make sure to follow me on Instagram. And if you need additional car buying advice, recommendations, or help with getting a great deal on your next new car purchase, make sure to visit carhelpcan.com. Thanks so much for watching and see you next time.